Hello again, and yet another in the series on wartime special units. This time we turn to the United States and with their special operations unit that they set up, which was the OSS. And the book that we're going to be talking about is this one, Bang Bang Boys, Jedburghs and the House of Horrors by John Whiteclay Chambers II, a history of OSS training and operations in World War II. And a very, very weighty tome, as they say. It goes right from the start in the origins, how William Donovan, Wild Bill Donovan, who was World War I Medal of Honor winner, was appointed to the job, how he started researching what was needed in this unprecedented area. And the United States really had no background in this kind of thing. They didn't really have much in the way of an intelligence organisation, let alone sabotage and subversion organisation. Unlike the countries in Europe, which had borders which were rather prone to intelligence operations. So one of the things he did was to come over to the United Kingdom in 1940. This was arranged via British Security Coordination in New York, and the book does have a couple of errors. And one is it mentions William Stevenson, who was the chap in New York who ran the Security Coordination, which was basically all the arms of the British intelligence there. And it continues the myth that his code name was Intrepid. There was a lot of misinformation about Mr. Stevenson put out after the war, and including one biography which was almost on a par with one of the Bond books. However, William Donovan came over to London. He met the heads of SIS, Office of Naval Intelligence, and SOE, and the book also mentions the SAS, but it puts it as being a branch of the Air Force, which it's not, of course, and went back to the United States and initially started what was called the Coordinator of Information, which then became the OSS, Office of Strategic Services. They started getting together places to train. They'd looked at the British model and had these remote training areas up in Scotland and so on, and they looked at setting something similar. So for example, they had RTU 11, which was known as the Farm, and Area B, which had a lot of the paramilitary training was held there. That was in the Cadogan Mountains area, which basically is the area where Camp David is, Fairmont. So another area that they started was Area F, which was the Congressional Country Club, which is a bit nearer to Washington, and they installed a lot of stuff there, including the fuselage of a C-47 aircraft, so they could practice either parachute exits, ground training, or placement of sabotage charges and this kind of thing. They started sending agents to be trained at Camp X in Canada, and then set up their own equivalent, which was basically Area B and Area F. And then William Fairbairn enters the picture. He was recruited from Camp X, and the book does talk a lot about him in detail. Dangerous Dan Fairbairn, the Shanghai Buster. there's a lot of first-hand experience. Guys who've been through training with Fairbairn are quoted as to what it was like. He says, "I teach what is called gutter fighting. There's no fair play, no rules except one, kill or be killed." The average American sense of sportsmanship and repugnance to such fighting presented a handicap, Fairbairn admitted, but he emphasised, when the student realises that the enemy will show him no mercy and that the methods he is learning work, he soon overcomes it. Fairbairn taught the techniques not only as survival skills, but to build up a strong self-confidence that would enable agents to overcome their fears and to be more effective in accomplishing their missions. This is a point that's overlooked sometimes. When people look at the training that Fairbairn and Sykes and others presented, it was rather short, which we can talk about, but one of the big things was the confidence. It was a build-up of confidence, and which was needed, particularly in people who were going to be sent in to occupied territories and operating on their own. Some more on Fairbairn and about the knife. And he told guys to have their knife with them at all times. He said in China he still had his knife to hand even in the shower. So he was having instilling this aggressive mindset throughout. Another instructor at Area B was a chap called Hans Tofte, who was a Dane. Now, I first heard about this gent from our late friend Mika, who was researching him, and I urged Mika to put his stuff down in a book at some stage. He had amassed an awful lot of information from various sources. But Hans Tofte was a very interesting guy. He had actually known Fairbairn in Shanghai, and he became an instructor excuse me, for the OSS, and was very highly regarded by some of the guys who survived, such as John Singlaub, who later became very, very prominent in American Special Forces. Fairbairn was taught the use of expedient weapons, pencils and stuff, as well as obviously the Fairbairn knife. So, as I say, the book is highly detailed, some really nice photographs in it and diagrams of where all the bases were. There are some mistakes. It says Fairbairn was Scottish, which he wasn't, but it really is brimming with information, and I think its appeal would be mainly to serious researchers and serious historians on the subject, rather than the casual reader who's just interested in a kind of overview of the subject. It cries out for an index because of this massive detail. It's sometimes hard to reach in and pluck out the specifics that you want, but it's an impressive work, and I applaud the effort it must have taken to put it all together, and it's an invaluable addition to the knowledge base.